Hey, welcome back to the channel. Now embarking on a new project. This is a custom wood canvas canoe that I'll be restoring. A kind couple asked me to help them out with this, and I obliged gladly because I do enjoy this work. So I just got off the phone with Northwoods Canoe Company with Roland Thurlow, and I ordered all the materials based on my inspections so far on the canoe. It's going to require a new canvas. The shear line planking along both sides is basically dry rotted and gone, and I'm going to have approximately 6, 7, maybe 8. I'll know more as I get the outwales off, but for full inspection of the rib tops of this wood canvas canoe, I know I have to scarf at least 8 of them based on what I've found so far. Luckily enough, the outwales, the bronze screws, have all been loosened already, so there's not going to be any trouble there. The stem bands also have to be removed. Those screws are number 0 Robertson screws, so I had to order some bits for that, but that's going to come off just fine too. So I don't foresee any troubles at all undressing this canoe, and it's just going to be a matter of disassembling what I need to, and then putting it all back together. So the order is in the mail. It's going to get shipped on Thursday, and in the meantime, I'll take you through each step, see what I found, show you what I found in terms of the shear planking rot, the rib top rotting, and I haven't found any cracked ribs yet, so we'll have to see what happens when the cover comes off. Thanks for following along on this restoration project. It's going to be a fun one, and appreciate you tuning in. So I have marked the rib tops with a grease pencil on the ones that I know are going to need to be repaired. You can see if I can take you in here. Just dry rotted. So what'll happen here, I'll make a cut, remove the shear planking after the cover is off, and then expose this rib top, and this will hold true for all of the rib tops. I'll make a scarf joint. I'll cut it at an angle and then fit in a new piece and glue it up with epoxy. I'll use epoxy. I know people use glue. I like to use epoxy. So yeah, you can see that. And then the rib, this is the shear line planking, which is just gone as well. So the port side of the canoe seems to have received the most damage, although it's definitely rot over here too. I mean, there's definitely rot on the starboard side too, which I'm showing you right now. That's all dry rotted too, but it's not as extensive as the port side. So I don't know how the canoe was stored or rested, but either way, it's going to be taken care of with the new planking. And now we're just going to get to taking out the Robertson screws, which I have already addressed that I've gone around and loosened all of them. Just a lot of screws to take out, but that'll go quickly. So this is what it's looking like with the outwales off. I'm looking at, you have your deck, your inwale, and the outwales, which we just removed. And I'm looking at this inwale here, and there was some type of filler that was used here, but this is all soft wood, and I think that it's going to require some more bow and stern deck region removal, meaning that the deck will have to come out, and the inwale is going to have to be repaired with a scarf joint and then steam bend it in to meet it's pretty acute angle here. I mean, it's pretty aggressive angle, and I'm using ash lumber, so I'm gonna have to steam bend that. But yeah, you can see the rot right here, and that's not going to get any better over the life of the boat. So we got to replace that too. Shear line planking all needs to be replaced. And we got some wrinkling here. So some water got behind this material and created this type of relaxation of that material. And you know, you got some tacks popping through here. Anyway, yeah, the outwales are off, so that tells me a lot more. So now I'm just going to take a razor blade and cut away the shear planks, and then flip the boat over, and this skin should come off fairly easily. Got a mixture of tack usage and staples. I'll be going with full staple application when the new canvas is installed. These are brass stem bands in very good shape. So we're going to preserve these and then polish them up for reinstallation when the new canvas is on. It'll look real nice. So now that the canvas is off, you can see what's been happening underneath the canvas. This is all mold that's been eating away at this wood, and it's all very brittle. A couple places I could easily put my, like here for instance, I could put my finger right through it and it will continue to go like that. Anyway, that's being replaced. This whole, that top shear line is being replaced. It's just that my concern now is going to be like how much am I going to have to dig into the stem area. So I'm going to have to remove some more planking on the forward end to get a better inspection of the stem on both the bow and stern. And you can see the stem here, and that rides right up underneath, and that's typically a place for rot to occur. And just a little curious as to what's going on with this softwood here. So we're going to have to take a better look at that, which, you know, that's a little suspect too. It looks like some filler has been used there. Anyway, that's why we do this. The great thing about wood canvas canoes is they can always be repaired. And we'll get to the bottom of it eventually. So I've come to my final conclusion on what the cover is on the canoe. And really what it is really just a lightweight canvas, and it's only been painted. And in the areas that aren't rotted, maybe received a thicker layer of paint, but it really failed alongside the top near the gunwales. And this is all rotted wood. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going through and removing what I can, and a lot of it's just breaking off anyway, but you can clearly see what needs to be replaced here. And then when I get to the ends, I'm going to have to take the decks out and then assess the bow and stern stems for the integrity of those components there. I'm not sure what that looks like at this point, but considerable amount of rot. And what I've done here, I have a grease pencil, and I'm just marking like all these rib tops. You can see how it's just flaking here. That's unacceptable. Sometimes when you have some loose material there, you can use some a wood hardener and brush that on liberally, and then let that do its job and harden up the wood, and that'll preserve it over a good length of time. However, these have all been varnished on the top, and the moisture was being absorbed into these shear planks, and then it just destroyed these ribs here. Just gone. So I have over 35 rib tops that need to be replaced at this time, and I'm not done counting. So we'll get there. Also, I like to label my planking in the order that they'll be removed and then reinstalled for, and ultimately the reason why I label them like that is for templating purposes. And then they go back on in the same order, and just streamlines the process for me anyway. So what I've done here is I'm removing the planking. I have to continue to go down. This is the stern stem, and there's quite a bit of dry rot that has occurred at the top. The more and more I take apart, the more and more I see that needs repair. The planking came off difficult. I think what happened was some type of varnish. It was like glued to the back side of these ribs. And now I'm going to be taking out the deck with these Robertson screws, which are hidden behind the planking in the rib tops. So I'm going to be disassembling this whole end of the boat. I'm going to keep the carrying handle in place just to maintain the shape of the boat until I get my measurements. And then I'm going to have to template this stern stem and then manufacture a new stem. And then when I receive the planking with my delivery, then I'll patch the new planking back into place. It's going to require potentially some moisture and some steam bending in order to blend with this contour here. It comes to a very aggressive sharp entry. This is a sharp entry canoe. Both it's a symmetrical boat, so both ends of the boat are very, very fine entry. So it makes for a fast boat in that regard, and also it's a short boat. So I think it's a very unique design in that regard. It's not very beamy, and with the sharp entry on the bow and stern, with two paddlers, I think you could move along pretty well in this canoe, to be honest. So yeah, we have stern stem reconstruction necessary. We have in-whale scarfing to do to replace where it comes to the point on top of the stern stem, and then still evaluating these ribs. I've ordered rib stock, and what I'll do is I'll cut the rib stock probably about 3-4 inches down on these ribs, and then glue them together with epoxy to make a very strong bond that will then reattach back to the in-wales, and then for the planking to cover. So yeah, I'm still continuing with disassembly of the boat. It's going to be full restoration. So I have removed the deck screws from the in-wale, and I am now able to release the deck. And what I'm finding is some of these planking is glued to the outside of the ribs here, making it a little more challenging to get these planks off to access the stem here. So my next move here, taking a look at this, it appears as though there was a little notch on top of the stem where the two in-wales will meet. This is a thinner in-wale to start with. I'm looking at, well, they're not the same. One's about 1/2 inch and one is about 3/8 of an inch. And what I'm going to try and do is make that a little more consistent throughout. I'm going to template this stem, and then I'll make a scarf cut at an angle, and then I'll try to pin that. Or what I'll do is I'll fabricate another piece similar to what I did on the Chestnut, and then epoxy that in to give a nice rigid stern stem. And then I'll have to do some angularity cuts here and then fit a notch into the in-wales. So I'm going to get the template, then I'm going to cut down some ash lumber, and I'm going to get right into rebuilding these in-wales and shaping the ash lumber to this contour here. and then that will, I'm going to beef it up a little bit. So I have more room to work with down here to do a proper notch on the top of this stem. And then that way it'll be glued, and then a screw will pass through both inwales into that tab on top of the stem, and that'll hold this all together. And then I'll be able to get back into reinstalling the planking and maintain the shape of the boat. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I've made my scarf cut on the inwale, and I've ripped down to dimension the size of the new inwale. And this is ash lumber. And what I'm doing is I have it clamped in place, trying to match the profile, which it's doing a good job with these clamps. Now I'm gonna face cut this inwale here with direct pressure against the scarf cut, because it's at an angle. You can't make a straight cut if you're going to match the profile at the end of the boat. So I'll apply pressure with my finger against the old scarf joint and slowly cut the new inwale, and then it should make a perfect match. So I finished this cut, and now we'll just remove the clamps and see if we line up correctly. Pretty sure we will, but you never know. And there it is. There's the scarf joint. Of course, it's going to require some sanding. This joint will be epoxied. So installing the stem is difficult. It's a difficult place to hold a piece of wood while you're making attempts to epoxy it. So you have to hold the piece of wood in place. What I like to do is drill through the backside, through the old stem with an 1/8" drill bit, and then insert a toothpick through the new piece, the new stem top, and then also through the old stem. And that'll hold it from sliding down. And then that'll give me an opportunity to mix up some epoxy and apply that epoxy. After the epoxy is applied, what I'll then do is clamp it as such, and make sure it's lined up and flush in the front, which it is, and then proceed from there. So it's a nice little trick. I know that some people will dowel down through. And then also what I've done in the past, I received a little trick by watching Nomad Boat Building. He puts a lobe on the well, I'm going to call this side, the back side, a little lobe that it increases the surface area where the epoxy can glue up with the old stem. And that also holds the new stem top piece in place, which makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to try something a little simpler in this application, and that's what I came up with. So that's what I'm going to do. So stem top gets epoxied, and then it's one piece epoxy at a time now, and then I'll epoxy each inwale at a time, and then I'll get into the top stem top cuts to create a little wedge for the inwales to receive that cut. So I'm just going to mix up a little West Systems epoxy. It's a 1-to-1, one pump of the hardener, 205 hardener, and then the 105 epoxy resin, one pump as well. Get this mixed up, and then we'll get that stem attached. I should also add that I added some colloidal silica to my epoxy mix, just to thicken it up a little bit, and just so it doesn't sag and it stays exactly where I want it to be. I'm going to apply some epoxy to this toothpick too as it goes through, just to reinforce where I drilled through the old stem and the new stem. Clean it up now because it'll just be more sanding later. So I've been working on the stern stem and reinstallation of the deck and molding in the new inwales that were scarfed in. And it's kind of a difficult process to film because it's so slow and tedious. But I'm going to take you along right now and just show you what I've done and what my next step is and how I'm going to move forward. This is the old stem here, and this is the new scarfed in stem top. And I have the two new inwales also scarfed in to the old inwale, and I've got the curve to match the old deck. It's shaping up really nice, and I'm doing one end at a time so that I maintain the shape of the boat. So maintaining the shape of the boat is critical with this boat because it's a custom designed canoe. I wanted to change a few things, but I can't do that. So this boat is naturally designed to have thin inwales at the end near the stems, and that's just the way it's going to have to stay. And it held up for years, so I'm just going to, reproduce what was found, and it's just a lot more work, a lot more cutting. So you can see how thin it is. This is about 3/8 of an inch, and it thickens to about 1/2 an inch, maybe 5/8 max. So that's the design of the boat, and you can see if I don't maintain this little intricate thinness of the inwale, then the planking won't wrap the way it's designed to wrap, and I would ultimately change the shape of the boat, and I'm not going to do that. So I just finished up with the stern stem, the inwales and the stern stem top reconstruction is complete, and now I'm moving on to removing the shearline strake, the shearline planking, and I'm running into a little bit of trouble. Haven't determined yet if it's glued to the backside or if there's heavy varnish on the inside, but I'm seeing some glue in the middle of the backside of the ribs, and it's pulling some wood away if I'm not careful. So what I'm using is just a simple putty knife and using a gentle tapping motion and trying to break it free gently. And then also, this is my tack puller tool. This is an Aero product here. I found this at Home Depot. And I know they have the longer tack pullers, but the angle on this right here gives it just enough leverage to remove those canoe tacks and to pull it free. And it's very ergonomic in my hand, and as many tacks as you got to pull, it's definitely a nice little tool that I found in order to remove all of these tacks. So I'm now in the process of removing all of the shear line planking, which I had hoped to do already, but the stern area of the boat required quite a bit of attention. I had to notch in the stem, which wasn't there before. It was pinned or doweled. So there's a nice natural locking mechanism there now, and it's screwed into the stem. The end wales are screwed into the stem. The deck has been reinstalled, temporarily screwed in place, so that when I go to finish the boat, because this is new wood, I will have to remove that deck again and apply some treatment for it, because that is a wood-to-wood surface with it's untreated at this time. So I'll remove the deck, treat all the wood, prevent rot in the future. So yeah, just removing all of the shear line planking at this time. It's going to take a little bit. So the shear planking has been removed, which was badly rotten, and as a result of that, these ribs have also suffered their consequences because of that rotting planking, water intrusion into the planking. So this is an example of a rib that will need to be scarfed. As I mentioned earlier, I have indicated each rib that will need to be replaced with a grease pencil mark on top of the rib. And I just recounted them. I have 35. And then those that will not be replaced or scarfed will receive some wood hardener and allowed to dry. And then I'll reevaluate at that time. So we are at the bow now, and this is the bow stem, bow end wale. There's rot on both, and all will be replaced. And in order to capture the curvature of this bow stem, we're simply going to use a piece of cardboard and trace that out appropriately, capturing the height and the curve. Now this stem here was doweled here, as you can see. On the stern end, what we did was we made a tenon that locks in the entire end wale to the stem, and in this application here, it was built, rested on top of the stem, and then I would imagine drilled and then glued to hold it all together. And that's a different way of doing it. I'm electing again to recreate what we did on the stern, which will be building in a tenon to the stem that will then will notch the end wales, the new end wales, to receive that tenon, and then screws will be applied from each side of the end wale into that notch, into that tenon, and then that'll make a very strong joint. So here we are. The first part of the process is simply capturing the height and the curvature of the stem. And now I'll just continue with the further disassembly of the forward end of the boat by removing these rib tops from the end wales, and then behind them you have the Robinson screws that fasten the deck into place, which we'll remove those as well. So the bow stem has been cut, and we'll manufacture a new piece for that. The next step is going to be to remove the rotted material from the inwales on the bow. And then the plan is also to create a tenon like we did on the stern stem that will ultimately create a mechanical lock with the inwales. And so we have to remove some material, and I'll show you what we're up against here. So as I was saying, we're going to be scarf cutting the inwales to remove the rotted sections, and then manufacturing new inwale sections. The rot is not as extensive as was found on the stern side, so less material needs to be removed. The only thing I'm up against right now is dimensionally these are different. The port side, which this is the port side, is 3/8 of an inch, and then where it tapers down to 3/8 of an inch, and then the starboard side is 5/8 of an inch. So when you're making this tenon, it's critical that you have workable material that is equivalent on both sides, and somehow I need to address that. So I've taken measurements, and it's about in this region where it's 1/2 inch. So I believe on the port side I'm going to make a scarf joint further back in order to create at least an 1/8 inch more material that will allow me to properly align and then create that tenon for the mechanical lock on the stem. So the bow port side scarf joint is complete. It was a little tricky just based on access because I didn't remove as much material as I did on the stern inwales. So I had some more interference from the ribs, and it was just a tricky cut. So the scarf joint that I cut, it's obviously at an angle, and so I started the cut with a pull saw, and then I just took that over to my vise and I just transferred that same angle and finished the cut at the workbench. And now I'm going to be working on the starboard, and that's going to require me clamping the new ash lumber underneath and then matching the angle of the scarf cut that I had previously made. Using the pull saw, I am going to apply pressure with my finger against the scarf cut, and that will allow me to match the angle and have a great connection. So the stem has had a chance to cure overnight, and it's solid, which is expected using epoxy. So what I have done is I've transcribed, I followed the stem profile up along the stem, and that'll be the shaping angle, because this is shaped to receive the ribbing in the planking from each side of the boat where it comes to this point. So it's angled. If it was just square as such, as the stem is right now, there'd be a backside gap with the planking, and that's not what you want. You want it to be a tight fit. So these corners will have to be shaved off, and I just intend to use a file. And then once that is complete, then I have that resting surface for the inwales. So the inwales have already been cut to dimension, and these are just ready to be installed once the stem is fully shaped. And that's probably all I'll get done on this stem section today, because once I mix up that epoxy, I have to let that cure before I continue. So just using a rasp, I will start taking down these corners. It's going to take a little bit of time. So the bow stem has been shaped, scarfed, epoxied, using a rasp and also a sanding drum on my cordless drill. What I did was took the original profile of the stem, transcribed those lines up to the top of the stem top replacement, matching the angle of the original stem. So you just work at that angle until you reach this 1/4 of an inch line, and then you just do some fine touch-ups with, I used a sanding drum like I mentioned on the inside face, and I just continued all around. I'm going to clamp the inwale to the stem and continually make adjustments until it's in the proper place. These ribs are still unaffected, so I know that the inwale height needs to be even with those. That's one way of ensuring that you're maintaining the lines of the boat. And we're spot on with the ribs, the rib tops. bow and stern ends have been completely rebuilt. That was some time-consuming work, and now I'm moving on to a next phase, which is going to be repairing all the rib tops. This is the rib stock that I need to cut and shape to match the taper on these ribs. The ribs have just a slight taper. I think I can use like a round over bit, or perhaps cut it to shape, and then maybe use a sanding technique in order to match the exact profile. This is the tool I'm using, just a Chicago brand oscillating tool with a 2 5/8 inch cutting bit, and it's given me enough length here to get my scarf angle, a suitable scarf angle, in order to apply a new piece to the rib tops. This is a rib top that has been removed. You can see that the plunge cutter, the oscillating cutter, has provided for a nice scarf joint here, which will mate up with the new rib stock just fine. I'll use this piece to match the angle on the new rib stock. Yeah, it's a nice cut, and you can focus on one rib at a time. I find it's helpful for me anyway. So each individual rib is 1 3/4 inches, and that's from tapered edge to tapered edge. So I'm gonna process this stock here to 1 3/4 inches, and then mix up some epoxy, and then glue them up with the scarfed cut on the existing ribs. So these rib tops are coming off fairly easy. They are fixed with the 7/8 inch brass Canoe tacks. And so lucky for me, they come out really easy. For the next guy though, I'm going with the 7/8 inch ring shank nails in silicone bronze, so it's going to be a little more difficult to remove. So I have several rib tops glued up with epoxy and cured. Some have been shaped, and what I've elected to do is shape them with a simple rasp. And each rib is not exactly the same. On average, they're 1 3/4 inches. So I've ripped the rib stock down to that dimension, but it requires hand shaping at each rib. So that's what I've been doing. I've been finding works really well is a piece of crocus cloth, and I can wrap the edges and really round that to match the profile of the existing ribs. And that's just about done. Of course, I'll sand it down to finer grits as I move along, but in order to get the initial shaping, that's pretty close to the existing profile. So I'll continue with the rest of shaping the rest of these the same way, using the rasp and sandpaper. I'm happy to have this clinching iron now. I was using, for my last chestnut, I just used a hammerhead. Use this surface here, but the clinching iron is going to conform to a lot of the contours of the canoe, and you can hold it, and it's just a more practical tool for this type of job. So utilizing the clinching iron that I just picked up from Northwood's Canoe, you provide the backing behind the inwale to provide strength for the nail to deeply seat within the inwale. So now it's time to secure all the rib tops to the inwale, and it's going to require pre-drilling. I have the depth of my drill bit set to the length of the 7/8 ring shank nail, and I'll pre-drill all of the rib tops and then drive the nails home. Okay, I'm starting to drive all the repaired rib tops and any rib tops that were loosened from the inwale for repairs, fastening them back to the inwale using the clinching iron that I described earlier, and a holding technique like this, and you just drive it home. Okay, so I've completed all the nailing of the rib tops, repaired, and those loosened to make the repairs, and I've completed that all around the boat. So no more clamps to maintain the shape of the hull. It's going to be, it's pretty rigid right now, just as it is. So the next phase is going to be cutting off all the rib tops, even with the inwales, and then starting to remove the thwarts, the seats, and the carrying handles in order to start giving a nice level surface here with a sanding along the rib tops and the inwale. And then when the outwales go on, another sanding light to match and blend all of that. So I'm just going to go right now and start cutting all the rib tops, even with the inwales, and then a sanding, and that's going to complete this video. The next video is going to be closing up all of the hull, including all the planking, through the canvassing, filling, and painting procedure. So yeah, the video is getting a little long, so I just wanted to end it here.